So hello traders, welcome back again to another episode. So in today's episode, I'm joined by Irene for a continuation of part 2 of what she initially did. So we had a part 1 where you sat down with Caleb and had an interesting conversation on different elements of psychology. So I'm going to take it from there. I'm going to bring in a little bit of a twist. Rather than us discussing about things in a step-by-step manner like you did with Caleb, I want to bring in some element of I want to take you off a bit from the structure that you had previously, but going more deeper into the content that we normally do. So consider this more or less like a session, a public one, not a private one. So there are some things you might touch on, others you might not touch on, but I think you can first of all start by introducing yourself, at least for this episode, for the ones who have not watched the other episode.
Okay, no problem. I'm Irene. Like you said, I'm a psychologist by training, and I currently practice with people in finance, specifically traders. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Okay, so right now, I think we were the first guinea pigs that you used for you to somehow gain some ground on the field of trading psychology.
Yeah.
But I feel like right now you've gained a lot to the point that you can somehow pinpoint some things. So I wanted us to start, first of all, with approach and techniques now that you have learned, which are useful for someone who's interested in trading psychology, or at least for the trader out there.
So approach and technique to the sessions, or in particular to traders?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what I found actually is just the basics. As in, when I came in, I remember one of the struggles was I came in looking at trading psychology as a completely different field. Like, ini kitu sijaiona, ni mnyama sijui. And then after a while of practicing, it started coming in that, it's the basics. So what I mean by the basics is, first of all, it's things like establishing like a proper therapeutic relationship. So things like creating a safe space where the trader can feel comfortable to just talk about what's going on, how things are happening, making it a non-judgmental space. So they're not coming into session to beat themselves up. We're coming here so you can open up, talk about what exactly is going on, and then we figure out the way forward from there. So there's been that's what I mean by going to the basics. So it'll be things like that, the non-judgment, the openness, the empathy, like just genuinely trying to understand
someone,
where are you coming from, things like that. Something as basic as just listening. Because a lot of the traders that then come, you find either A, they haven't been to traditional therapy, or B, you haven't been in a situation where you've been able to sit down and have a dedicated amount of time to just talk about you and your trading. You don't have to ask me how my day is. You don't have to care. We've come here, it's purely for you, and creating that space for traders where they can just be like, this is what's bothering me. But they can talk about themselves and their problems in the context of trading with somebody who understands.
Okay.
So I think the most important part of the trading psychology was just understanding the basics of trading, what that looks like. So when someone is explaining what they're going through, I can understand in the context of trading.
Okay.
But for the most part, what I found is the approaches are zile tu.
It's the same psychology.
It's the basics applied to a field that now I had to learn.
Okay. And would you say there's some sort of patterns to how people struggle? Like, have you identified like common themes that somehow shape how traders struggle to trade markets?
Kind of. I think the biggest one is their relationship with emotions. I think I've got instances where traders want to turn off the emotions. Like, if I didn't feel this, then I would be better off. And I think that's a misconception. Hata ukionanga memes ati unajaribu heartbreak trader. Huku nje, there's this concept or idea that to be a trader, you need to be cool, you need to turn yourself off, you need to brave through these things. And I think that's what I've seen a fair bit amount of. So just their relationship with the emotions. hiyo imekuwa, I think it's something I've noticed repeatedly. And then another one is just the, I don't know how to call it, lack of self-awareness, or where you don't know what the problem is. Okay, so in now what I was talking about, like in more traditional therapy, there's the concept of the presenting problem and then the underlying problem. So a lot of people know what the presenting problem is. They don't know it well. So they'll come in and they'll explain a situation, and then ukikaa chini maswali mbili tatu, that's not the real problem. There's something right behind it.
That was the problem.
That was the problem. But then they didn't see that for one reason or the other. So I think that's been another thing where, that's why I'm like, I'm not sure if it's self-awareness or just not being able to identify what the psychological problem is, or sometimes even technical problem, but hiyo ku-identify inakuanga ngumu.
A bit challenging. Let's come back to emotions a bit. I'd say for me now that I've traded for a couple of years, around 6-7 years, what you've just said, which is turning off your emotions, seems to be something that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, eventually it comes back to bite you.
Yeah.
So how would you or what do you normally advise people to do in line with their emotions rather than shut them down? How should someone work around their emotions when they're trading to attain that balance of rationality, you know, not to be, because I tend to think of rationality as being able to align your rational, to align your analytical side with maybe the emotional side. And doing that is somehow hard. I think most people find a very hard time to do it, especially for men. I think for sessions, even when we come to sessions, sometimes you might really ask me, name how you feel, and I'll really struggle to just come up with a name of, this is what I feel, you know. So can we go more into such stuff? What do you have in line with that?
I think the first one that I like to emphasize is the idea of what you're talking about, like when you said especially men. I think what my first priority is usually to emphasize that the idea of processing emotions, it's not something that people have. It's not at somebody is better at managing their emotions, or they're innately born, see talent. It's a skill
that you learn.
It's a skill that you learn. And a lot of people are not taught how to. And now the fact that a lot of traders are men, and now you look at how men are brought up in society.
Yeah.
Kuwa mwanaume ni
kukaza.
Yeah.
Kwa si lielia hapa.
Unalilia nani? Wewe kama mwanaume. Hakuna. So that's usually the first order of business. That the reason why you're struggling is not because you're weak. It's not because that now you don't know how to do it. It's because it's a skill you've never practiced.
Okay.
So just the way you taught yourself how to trade, that's the work we're going to do here. We're going to teach you a skill. And I think that's important because it takes the pressure of wanting to immediately be good at it.
Okay.
So then you know, okay, it's a process we're starting. So that's usually the first order of business. And then next is usually to kind of educate on emotions. So repair that relationship with emotions, in the sense that emotions are usually a reaction to something. And their feedback, their information, their indicators. If you're angry, it's usually in a reaction to something. So if you're happy, it's in reaction to something, things like that. So there's a relationship between you and the outside world, that your emotions are it's like a feedback loop of sorts. So that's usually the first thing. Don't demonize your emotions. They're there for a reason. And then after that is where we go into, okay, understanding where these emotions come from. That's where your application of CBT comes in. That before a feeling comes, there's usually a thought. And that thought is a perception of a situation. Okay. So what I usually like to say is the same situation could happen to two people, but then because of the thoughts they have, because of their perception, the interpretation of that situation, very different feelings. So now being able to understand what these thoughts are the ones, is what then helps you understand, oh, okay, that's what the feeling is. Okay. So we could start there, depending on the person, you could also start with just naming an emotion.
Okay.
Like it's in
As
that
simple as that.
as simple as that. And in theory, it's simple. How are you feeling? Is a simple question. The answer
Answering it is much more
is
complex.
very complex.
Okay.
Yeah. So there'll be multiple things we'll do to just. The goal is to teach how to process emotions. So once you learn how to process emotions, you get to a point where now you actually start using them as feedback. So if you're scared of entering a trade, then you're more conscious of it and you're more likely to figure out the actual root of the fear.
Okay.
So if the root of the fear for you is you're not sure whether you're supposed to be in the trade, that's why you're scared, then why aren't you sure? Is it outside your system? Do you not have enough data to back up the system, the strategy you're about to execute? Is it that it's now fear based off of your FOMO?
Yeah.
You feel like money is being made and you're not making it. If you're not able to analyze the thoughts that go behind that, you won't know. You'll just react to the fear. So the idea is, rather than being reactive, you're now able to have that self-awareness of, I'm scared. So what does that mean? You're able to slow down and you widen the gap between the feeling and the reaction.
Okay.
And make better decisions in that way.
So it's very important for someone to learn how to widen that gap between feeling and reaction.
Yeah.
Because like for me, one thing that took me quite a lot of time to understand, and I feel like that's something that also most traders don't really understand, is you'll never get to a point where trading will be comfortable. Like how the game is designed is discomfort is part of the game. In that when you're in a position, when you're taking a trade, some level of anxiety is baked into the outcome of the trade, depending on how it will go. The problem is when you act on that anxiety, and especially when you act on it not in line with your plan. Like when let's say you're in a trade that is going to your favor, I like using this as an example. In a trade which is working to your favor.
Yeah.
You have $300, $400 in profit. You're looking maybe to make $1,500 in that trade. Often you'll find that when it gets to 800, 900, the level of anxiety gets to widen rather than decrease. So you're more anxious about, will it really get to my target? And the higher chances it will get to your target and probably surpass your target. But if you don't pay attention to that feeling and realize this is just a feeling, you'll act out of it. And when you act out of it, that's another lesson that you're learning, okay? So it's like you've left some money on the table again. So I think one of the things that, and I think that really came into me when I started coming for sessions, it's realizing, so there's no point that I'll ever get to that emotions just disappear, because as long as I'm trading, hope will come in, fear will come in, some level of discomfort. I like calling it discomfort. And it's learning how to sit with that discomfort that will make you a good trader.
Yeah.
Like right now, for the whole of this week, I've not taken a trade. I was watching what will happen fundamentally. There was no setup in line with my plan. Some very beautiful moves have already started in the market. I've seen them. I've not taken part in them because they're not in line with my plan. But I can assure you there's some level of, you should take these positions. You should just, you can see where markets are going. Like just take the trades. And I feel like that's where most people go wrong. Most traders go wrong in that they don't realize that their feelings are not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Like their feelings are just that, feelings. It's just a feeling. You're anxious about whether an outcome will take place. That does not mean that outcome will not take place. You're just anxious about it. So I feel like coming for sessions really opened me up to that idea that you never get to a place where you're comfortable completely when you're trading. And part of the job is to get used to that level of discomfort that is in the market.
Yeah, and learning, I think what you're talking about is the idea of learning to act on feelings or not act on them rather than react. So you're not a slave to your emotions, where if something happens, then I must get myself out of anxiety. And that's actually one of the skills that is part of emotional processing. It's called willingness.
It's called?
Willingness.
Okay.
Just the ability to just sit. What will happen? And
just allowing it to flow.
allowing it to come. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. When you're ready, you go.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'll sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think I want to ask a little bit more of a personal question, but it's something we've also talked about, but not on camera, something of the sort. in psychology, I've read a lot of psychology books. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand psychology. And I think one thing that I've really realized, there's a very big divergence between what and how. Like there's a very big divergence. Like often we know what to do, we don't know how to do it, especially on psychology. Like most psychological literature is actually about what rather than how. There's some which is always about how, but often I find it that if you tell someone, I want you to become more self-aware, they'll tell you, okay, that's something I really also want to, but how do I do it? Probably they have no clue. So how would you advise the traders who are out there to move more from what to how? Because I feel like very many people or very many traders know, I should be patient. I shouldn't close a trade like that. I should follow my plan. We know these things.
You know these things.
How to do them? That's where it breaks down, because you find that, and that's why you'll find people are so self-critical, so self-judgmental. Someone will just say, and I knew I shouldn't do this, but I still did it. Like even when they come to session, they'll tell you, Irene, sikufaa kufanya hivi, but nilifanya. So how would you advise the guys who are out there? Like how would you pull them more from the what to the how? What would you advise them to do?
For traders in particular, and this is something I also spoke about in the last podcast with Caleb, just when he asked like, what gap do you think you're going to feel? And that was my biggest one, just the translation between the what and the how. So I think one would be working with somebody. Well, ideally, it would be a setting where, it's a professional setting, you're sitting down, but also the idea of accountability can help. Just like having somebody to sit down and genuinely, if it's the two of you, it can be something, what is it called? Reciprocal.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's something reciprocal between the two of you where you assess each other. If you can find at least one other trader. That one may be a bit difficult, but it is possible. Okay. So there's that level of accountability for what to do, but the how, and then if you have to explain to somebody, it becomes a bit trickier to lie, especially if it's somebody who's listening out to catch you on your bullshit. Can we curse?
Yeah. You can curse.
So there's that, and then second, especially in trading psychology, I think it would be who you read. So there's a reason why I sing his praises every day, all the time, because I think he has a very good grasp of being able to explain what to do and then break it down into tangible steps that you can take to then execute. So any book by Brett usually will give you the what and the how. And the one I particularly like it was one of the first books you actually recommended to me.
The Daily Trading Coach.
The Daily Trading Coach. That one would be a very good translation.
Here at Financial Hub, we offer the first two classes of our masterclass for free. In the first class, Introduction to Trading, you learn the initial overview of the concepts, principles, and practices involved in trading. In the second class, Fundamental Analysis, you learn the underlying factors driving supply and demand in the markets. You can get in touch with us by calling the number below or filling the form in the description box. Or you can visit our offices at Lavington Mall, Chandarana Building, 4th floor, office number 401.
Let's talk about mindfulness. That's one thing that you've really helped me work around for the year 2023. I think that has significantly improved my trading performance.
Nice.
Like being able to just say, okay, like right now, I know to some point I really want that thrill of being in the market, but I'm very mindful of it. Like I know, the markets are moving and I can be making some good money, or I'd want to be making money, but there's no clean opportunity, that is in line with my system. And I really have to be mindful of such instincts when they pop around. So let's start about, like, just describe mindfulness, why you think it's important for traders, how you think it can help traders, and what steps you think someone can take to develop it on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. Mindfulness is actually one of the things I also kind of learned on the job.
Okay.
Because it was you who was was like, you want to do this. So it was something else I had to educate myself on. So I'm still in the process of learning it as well. But from what I know of it, the idea of mindfulness is being present and being in the moment and being able to focus your attention in the now. So a lot of time, if you spend your life you're not in the present. A lot of people either live in the future or the past. So you find like even with disorders, things like anxiety, you find people who are prone to anxiety, you ask them where they're living. They're not here. They're either worrying about the future or thinking about the mistakes they made in the past. Same thing with depression. So you're always stuck in places that are not now. So how mindfulness helps in that is it helps you focus your attention willingly, intentionally, and pull it out of either future or past and bring it here, and you are the one in control of that. So it's not your mind wandering and taking you wherever it wants to go. It's you pulling yourself back to, and it can be an internal experience. I think a lot of people, when think of meditation, mindfulness, they think of meditation like, sitting and you're zen with your eyes closed. It doesn't always have to be that way. That's one way it can be practiced. And it's just a matter of focusing your attention either on your internal experience. You can even practice mindfulness right now by being very much in the moment. So how I think that helps with trading is that if you are able to be mindful, you would be more in sync. In theory, you would be more in sync with the markets. If you're not thinking about the future or the past, when you're looking at the markets, you're looking at exactly what information it's giving you, not the analysis you did last week that you thought would then interpret to then it should be doing this. It's what is it doing now. I think that would be a way that it could translate. I think what you're describing is a bigger sense of like self-awareness also, where you're more cognizant of the thoughts that are happening internally. So you're more aware of your internal experience and less likely to react to thoughts that you didn't consciously observe or see. So your life isn't happening to you. Your trades aren't happening to you. Jipate, what?
Niko ndani ya
trade, hata sijui. That doesn't happen. Because you're more attuned to being in the now in your body. And it also helps if you're in the now with what you're talking about, like just simply not thinking about a trade, then you're not going to make as many mistakes because you've done what you need to do. And now you're here, you're having this conversation, you're not thinking about why you're good. You're not in the future, you're not in the past, you're not in something that's not happening now. So I think in that way, it can be really helpful for traders. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, sort of answers the question. Now, I'd love to ask, the way I've figured out trading is it's a skill set. Many people look at trading, and that's something I'm really pissed off about. I think I'm really pissed off about that because it takes years, for example, for someone to develop some skill sets, and it's very wrong when someone who's not knowledgeable about something has an opinion over that particular thing. And it's just that, barely that, an opinion. But I was talking about the skills. Given that trading is a skill set, I tend to look at it into different skill sets. Now, there's the technical aspect of breaking down markets, pattern recognition, coming up with good trade ideas. There's the money management aspect of knowing how much to risk, how to play offense, defense, when to take risks, when not to take risks. But then there's the psychological aspect of trading, which deals with a lot of mindfulness, like you're saying, following your plan, being disciplined, peak performance psychology, at what, like right now, I feel like given the time of the year where we are, I'm not in peak performance mode. Like, it's very hard for you right now for you to do as much as you would. When you're waking up at 5, let's say, and sleeping at specific times, such things. So, what psychological skills have you seen are important for traders to develop? Like, will you pinpoint, I feel like a good trader should have A, B, C in terms of psychological skill sets?
Okay. I think the one that comes to mind the first, I think it's things that we've already been talking about.
Okay.
Things I was talking about, emotional processing, very important.
So emotional intelligence, very key.
And emotional intelligence, emotional processing. I think there's a bit of a difference. But yes, so in that regard, yes, it's a part of emotional intelligence. So there's that. There's what I was talking about, the self-awareness. Kujijua ni muhimu. Huwezi tibu kitu hujui. So I think that would be the most important. I hear people talking about discipline. I think you guys talk about discipline a lot. But I think discipline is really broad, and it can be very broad for different people, because what's causing you to be indisciplined
it's not the same that is causing the other guy.
So sometimes I get frustrated when a problem is just smooshed into one big concept. So I'm being indisciplined. I'm self-sabotaging. What does that mean? Let's go deeper into that. The most important would be those two, the emotional processing and the self-awareness. And the reason why I say that is because it has, what are they called? The effects then blend into everything else. So it'll help. You have those two. If you're able to manage to process your emotions, then if you're being indisciplined by deviating from your plan because of FOMO, then if you're processing the fear and whatever is causing you to feel that way, then you're not going to be indisciplined. You've solved the problem by solving something else.
Yeah.
Same thing with your story, self-awareness. If you're able to sit down and pull back and be like, I'm having these thoughts, but these thoughts are not necessarily true. I don't have to act on them. By being aware of what is happening in your head, then you're able to make better decisions, because now you have a gap between when a thought occurs to you and when you act on it.
Okay.
So I specified these two because they have a compounding interest.
Okay. Okay.
So I would say those two.
Okay. Now for the guys out there who are interested in sessions, okay? So I've come in, I want to come in for session. I do the normal evaluation that you normally do. You tell me, Mr. Ken, you have problem A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. You have all these problems, but you can solve them by focusing on probably A, B, C. Like how do you measure progress for people who come for your programs? Like how do you tell this person has moved from A to B to C to D?
Usually in session, I'll have a section where I'll write down the client progress, and usually this is something I'll tell them. So even them, they notice.
Okay.
Have you noticed that you're moving also? So and it'll be things like if they're so we're working on individual skills. So if they're better able to name feelings, or they're better able to draw a distinction between what is a thought, what is a feeling, then I know we're making progress in that way. I could ask them also, like, do you feel like we're making progress? Then we can measure how far from the goal they feel like they are. Also, I'd also mentioned this in the previous one where I talked about sometimes you're not dealing with the same problems you are dealing with. When we started,
you had this problem.
You had this problem, and now it's something you asked us by the way, we used to do that. Is that still happening?
Yeah.
So when there are things that we've been able to work through and file, I'll be like, okay, now that is how I'm making progress. Okay.
So right now, because you've sat with a couple of traders, and I always joke to you that, like for me right now, because of the way I've understood the markets, I feel like there are very few traders who fail because of psychological difficulties. I feel like majority of traders fail because they don't have a clear and distinct edge in the markets. You've sat down with traders who've come to you and told you, mimi niko na shida ya discipline, lakini ukimwambia give me your trading plan, ana. Ama mimi shida yangu ni I'm greedy. But if you tell them, okay, what do you know about risk management? They know nothing, Or me, I'm trying to make a living out of markets. If you ask them, okay, why are you trying to make a living out of markets with $1,000 account? They also don't have an answer. So do you feel like there's a huge divergence between people who blame trading psychology? Because I feel like traders who've even traded for a month normally say, "Mimi kuna shida ya psychology." Like you've just, you still don't even know what you're doing well, but you've already said, "Hey, I need to be writing my thesis for me to graduate," because I feel like before psychology becomes a problem to you in trading, you really need to have developed.
Yes.
So for the guys out there now who come to you like that, what do you normally tell them?
Usually those are some of the easiest sessions
Mm-hmm.
because you can spot the problem very quickly by the kinds of questions that come up. Vile tu umesema, what do you know about, like, okay, I'm greedy. Okay, what do you know about risk management? What's your average hit rate?
Mm-hmm. Why are you greedy?
Why are you greedy? You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So those are usually some of the easier ones. And I think what I've noticed is a lot of people, it's not that ati amejigamba anajua hii kitu. It's because what I'm realizing is the technical problem manifests psychologically. So when you're not sure whether to enter trade or not because you don't have a clearly defined trading plan, how that manifests is anxiety, fear, impulsivity. So what you're feeling is psychological. So of course you're going to say the problem is psychological. So you're feeling a psychological issue.
Okay, so because it manifests now psychologically,
Yeah.
you assume that the problem is psychological.
The problem is psychological. It must be. See, I'm feeling FOMO.
Mm.
Na kwanza kwa hiyo kitabu, chapter 1, FOMO. Hey. So people tend to round off to that because they're feeling it. And it makes sense. So usually having somebody to just sit down and point out, okay, these are the gaps. Usually it's very quick for them to even be like, oh, that's what I need to work on.
Yeah.
So those are some of the easier sessions. It usually tends to be something that's very, very easy to spot. And for them, it tends to be very easy to accept. Because they immediately say, I haven't met anyone who the problem was technical. We break down where the technical problem is and they're like, apana siyo. So
often they also agree that is the problem.
in fact, they didn't even realize, it hadn't occurred to them that it could be a problem.
Okay.
It was like, oh, okay, let me go work on that. So it tends to be a very easy. Those sessions are
They're very, very easy.
very easy.
Okay. So as we come to an end, right now that we've discussed, I think, a couple of things on psychology, what specific advice would you have for, one, may I'd ask you for guys who are doing psychology and are interested in trading psychology, because I feel like that's a space that is somehow untapped. Like there's a lot that can be done on that side for the African market specifically.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for guys who are interested in that field? Do you think it's something interesting? What do you think is challenging? How would you tell them to embrace it or look at it? And is there any closing remarks that you'd have about your programs now that you're going into 2024? So guys who are interested now in knowing more about your sessions, what more can you tell them that is coming for 2024?
Okay. I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
About people who are doing psychology and
Interested in pursuing
interested in it. I think the first one would be be open to it. Like that would be the first thing. Because I remember one of my lecturers in uni told me, if you've done psychology, you can walk into any office and convince them that they need you. Anywhere, any industry. And the way it was phrased was kidogo. But the idea is when you're learning psychology, you're learning about the human mind and behavior.
Okay.
So this can be applied anywhere. Like open your scope to beyond what's sitting in, like, when people imagine a therapist sitting down with a notebook, broaden that scope. It doesn't have to be counseling. So that would be my first advice. Just look a bit outside the scope of traditional therapy and see where you can apply yourself based off of your interest. And then specifically in regard to trading psychology, I would say be prepared to learn a lot on your own, because I think Caleb was one who mentioned he doesn't know any other trading hata mimi siwajui wenye wako Kenya kama wako wajitokeze siwajui. I've looked on LinkedIn, I'm not finding.
Hujapata bado?
Sijapata bado.
Pioneer.
So
okay.
I think there, be prepared. You're going to do a lot of reading, a lot of research. I even have like a Notion page there that Mandika number 3 for degree number 3. Maybe
you have to now learn a new skill set completely.
It's a new skill set. In regard to the program next year, I'm still taking on new clients, and it's been very interesting in the time I've operated with new clients. Just seeing how diverse people are, diverse problems, and coming up with working with traders to come up with solutions for their unique problems has been interesting. So if you are experiencing any like psychological issues, that would be what I would say. You could come in. The evaluation session is free, so I'm not going to charge you to come tell you to go do backtest or your problem is technical. No, just come in, we figure out what's going on and what you can work on your own, and then you can decide if you want to continue having the sessions regularly. So yeah, that was what I would say.
Okay, so yes guys, we've just cleared a session with Irene. We've gone through a couple of interesting things. Lawi will do part 3 with Irene. I think the format of this interview is for everyone to sort of have some time to pick her mind and share it with you guys. So there's a lot you can learn in the field of trading psychology. I tend to believe that 80-90% of your success depends on it, especially if you've done the other work. If you haven't, you still have a lot to do on that side. However, once you've gathered enough knowledge about markets, everything else comes back down to how good you are at knowing yourself. To summarize what Irene said, you must really know yourself and know how to position yourself for you to succeed in the markets. Personally, I'd say having attended her sessions, very, very helpful. Realizing, I think the biggest epiphanies for me were realizing the difference between what and how. Like realizing you can spend a lot of time knowing what to do, but not knowing how to do it. And when I changed my mind from what to how, I think I've seen that huge difference in how I conduct myself, how I'm developing my psychology stuff, staying out of markets. Also giving myself time, I think, to learn things, because I feel like most people assume if you read The Disciplined Trader, now you're a disciplined trader. It's not that easy, guys. It takes time for you to develop some of these things, you know. Yeah. You really have to go through the ups and downs. Markets are just markets. But before you become fully consistent, it will take you some energy, time, and probably also some effort. Because without those 3 things, I think it will really be a burden and a struggle.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, I think we'll stop there. If you're interested in having the first session, like Irene said, it's free, so you can have it and test it. I don't think there's anyone who's come for the free session who said the session was bad. So come for the session, try to see where your problem is. Don't assume. You also have online sessions, so someone can book online.
I'm rolling that out in Q2 of next year.
So up to Q2 next year. For the guys in Mombasa, in Nakuru, Kisumu, Poleni, you have to wait till March next year now for you, or April of next year for you guys to get a chance to pick Irene's mind. But 3 months is not a long time. 90 days if you've done your back work is not a long time. So looking forward to that. I think it's quite interesting. I normally joke to you that we're doing something new, something that has never been done before, especially for this soil. So I feel like if you think about how Africa will look like in 2030, 2040, there'll be more people like you, hopefully, because we'll have more hedge funds, we'll have more people focusing on the global markets because of the aspect of globalization. So those are some of the things that we're looking into, trying to see if we'll have some marks stamped. And it's an interesting thing to see if we'll be able to develop that framework all the way to the end. But I think with that said, we'll catch up next time, guys. Peace.